Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Tuesday, February the 10th, 2026. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week thus far. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Friendly reminder, everybody, of course, haven't already. If you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. La 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 la. La 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 la. You watching now? All right, there we go. All right. So, anyways, we got three people in here now. All right. So, I guess I will go ahead and start a little early in terms of talking about what's on tap for tonight. So, got one article I'm going to go over from Bleeding Fool, um, uh, talking about this case. They're talking about how Dan Slott's Reckoning War redefined the Fantastic Four. Pretty lengthy article where I give some commentary on it. And of course, as always, if you guys haven't already, you guys know about by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. After that article, of course, we'll get into the wrestling wrap up. Look back to last night's Monday Night Raw. Look ahead to tonight's NXT. Probably talk, as WWE continues to build towards Elimination Chamber at the end of the month, and TNA, which will probably have some talent on NXT tonight, of course, because of the crossovers, will, as they prepare for their No Surrender pay per view this Friday night. Then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So, with all that being said, of course, why don't we go ahead and get into the articles then? Let me go ahead and pull that up. Go ahead and pull up the article we're going to go over tonight here. Get right into it. Alrighty then. So, that being said, let's go ahead and do this. Alrighty then. So, how Dan Slott's Reckoning War redefined the Fantastic Four, article by Gene Phillips, published today, February 10th, 2026. So let's get into this. So, following the respective departures of first Jack Kirby and then Stan Lee from the Fantastic Four title, almost every later raconteur said something or other about how the starring characters needed special treatment because they were a quote-unquote family, as opposed to supergroups that functioned like loose affiliations, like loose affiliations of super policemen. And that is true. I mean, in essence, the Fantastic Four were a family. I mean, Reed and Sue were a married couple. Johnny was Sue's younger brother, and then Ben Grimm was like a close family friend, basically. So, but saying this doesn't mean anything if a creator doesn't have any insight into what sort of conflicts and tensions are unique to families. Fantastic Four certainly wasn't the first adventure series organized around a familiar matrix. In the Silver Age of comics, there had been two notable predecessors, and both of them DC's Time Master with Rick Hunter and Sea Devils came closer to the oft mentioned came closer than the oft mentioned Challengers of the Unknown to the makeup of the Fantastic Four. Now, granted, to the Unknown had a very similar origin premise um, compared to the Fantastic Four, and that's why they get mentioned more. But I guess what they're saying here is that Time Master and Sea Devils had more the familial matrix, as they called it here. So, anyways, we continue on with the article here. Smart leader, strong sidekick, leader's girlfriend, girlfriend's kid brother, Stan Lee, or Jack Kirby may have seen one or both DC features and subconsciously imitated the template of the character types. But they added elements one would never find in those strictly juvenile DC titles. Maybe their success stemmed, as some have argued, from combining Lee's penchant for operatic drama with Kirby's passion for sci-fi tropes. But whatever quote unquote origin story fans might choose to write about the creative success of the Fantastic Four, Lee and Kirby arguably produced the first adventure series built around a family where the female characters had some agency opposed to the will of the males. I guess what they mean by agency here is that they were independent characters in and of themselves. They weren't just subservient to the guys in the storytelling. In fact, I see in the Lee Kirby oeuvre a gender dynamic reminiscent of what little we know about the sex roles of primeval families, which coalesced around the female's need to quote unquote nest and the male's need to quote unquote hunt. In juvenile sci fi comics, quote unquote hunting doesn't connote tracking down savage beast. Rather, it means that the heroes are always seeking the next adventure to please a dominantly male audience. When a familiar ensemble included girls, women, the female's function was often to worry about how the group could possibly overcome the peril of the polka dot gorilla. Okay. That's the peril of the polka dot gorilla. That sounds like a very interesting adventure. Ah, oh boy, okay. The peril of the polka dot gorilla. Alternately, the girl might be a tomboy who is as enthusiastic as the guys at seeking the next adventure, and so didn't challenge the male priorities. Like the girl member of Sea Devils, family conflict showed up in crime melodramas or even in teen humor titles, but not apparently in adventure comics. Yet, almost from the start, Fantastic Four showed the tense dynamic of a family cooped up in the same quote unquote nest, often depicting Reed and Sue playing quote unquote mommy and daddy to a fractious couple of siblings. Sue Storm, though, not only fretted when the Thing and Torch quarreled, but apparently considered at one point chucking the quote unquote den mother gig for a seat on the throne of Atlantis. Allusion to, of course, when Namor attempted to court her, as it were. Anyways, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment, so I'll be right back, but I'll put some music on while I'm gone. All right, I'm back. So let's take care of that real quick, and then get back to the article here. So, anyways, continuing on with the article, I don't want to suggest that Stan and Jack were more than loosely aware of the molds they were breaking. Clearly, they were mostly flying by the seat of their respective pantaloons. But over time, many of the latter-day raconteurs on the Fantastic Four gave such matters as female versus male, quote unquote, agency a lot of thought. And that brings me to Dan Slott. I believe that in tandem with assorted collaborators, Slott's run on the Fantastic Four title from issues number 1 through 46, 2018 to 2022, in parentheses there, has done the most to logically extend what Stan and Jack wrought. Okay, a little grammatical typo there. I don't think they needed. Rot is not. I don't think neither one of their names was Rot, but I think we all knew that. But at least in terms of gender dynamics, culminating in the arc called the Reckoning War, quote unquote. There's a lot of backstory stuff Slot works into War, quote unquote, that one has to track down in other features. Fantastic Four: Reckoning War was a major Marvel Comics cosmic event written by Slott, covering issues of the Fantastic Four 2018 series, parentheses there, and many other tie-ins, and featured a multiversal war that reignited an ancient conflict predating the Kree, Skrulls, and Galactus, forcing the Fantastic Four and the rest of the Marvel Universe, including Doctor Doom, to confront Oblivion. An advanced ad for the arc claimed that that war was quote unquote 15 years in the making. Well, what that really meant was that Dan Slott introduced the idea of the war back in 2005 in a 2005 issue of his She-Hulk run, and then sat on the idea for 15 years, possibly with the hope of being able to develop his concept in a plum series like Fantastic Four. I don't say this in disparagement. I like the fact that Slott's Fantastic Four run culminates in the ambitious Reckoning project. Parentheses here. There's some romance stuff between She-Hulk and Jack of Hearts that also comes from the She-Hulk title, but I found it easy to roll with. On parentheses there. But Slott's main foundation for his new epic was in a 1964 story told by Stan Lee and Larry Lieber, The Origin of the Watcher, from Tales of Suspense number 53. Hmm. Of course, this simple cautionary tale about the perils of arming rude savages had to get a more quote unquote cosmic treatment by Slott, which is more or less what fans expect these days from the Fantastic Four and similar Marvel titles. In the new narrative, the benighted uh, Prosilicans don't just get atomic power, but some Watcher super technology that dwarfs anything that even the most advanced Marvel aliens can come up with. The Prosilicans um, launch a war of dominion, and when their opponents retaliate, 9/10 of the then known universe is destroyed. Only the power of the Watchers can preserve what's left by sealing the corrupted parts of the universe into a veritable quote unquote outer darkness called the Barrens. So in this iteration, the Watchers swear their oath of non interference, not because they harmed one world with their act of Promethean generosity, but because the entire universe was almost expunged. But millions of years later, the Watchers' original hubris will come back to bite the universe in the arse again. one Procylician name of Lord Wrath, apparently survived all those millennia in the Barrens, and finally decides to annihilate the protected 1/10 of the cosmos the Watcher saved. He rustles up three henchmen, similarly immortal Procylicians, who also sport superpowers and the euphonious names of Ruin, Rapture, and Reject. Together, they are quote unquote the Reckoning, and they start disseminating Watcher tech throughout the galaxies to foment in what might be called, in parentheses after David Brin, quote unquote negative uplift. Everywhere various alien empires go to war, and of course, one group of aliens just has to hassle Earth, home of the Fantastic Four, and that premier alien fighter, Reed Richards. Yeah, I guess you get the Shi'ar, you get the Scree, you Kree, the Skrulls, the Shi'ar Empire, maybe even Thanos and well, I guess Thanos and Kang wouldn't be involved here yet. I guess this actually it's kind of the way they're telling the story here reminds me of something DC did as well. I'm not, as I was saying, the Fantastic, but more recently, this somewhat reminds me of, the Ring Spectrum sagas, right? The Yellow Lanterns and all that. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Or actually, no, not that. Actually, more like Parallax. Actually, it reminds me more of Parallax. First, Reed gathers intelligence from She-Hulk, who informs him of her experiences with various Time Guardians and the Reckoning Prophecy. Then the Fantastic Four stumbles across Nick Fury, who became an aide to Uatu, the Watcher, in a very involved subplot. Uatu is out of the picture for a bit, but Fury brings a gift to the party, a device with which super genius Reed can perform a quote unquote positive uplift on himself. Or maybe it's not so positive, according to worried Mrs. Richards, parentheses, and anyone who ever saw Forbidden Planet, unquote, parentheses rather. On the plus side, with this intelligence boost, Reed instantly figures out that all the galactic brush wars, are smokescreens, quote unquote, for Lord Wrath's real purpose: to get hold of a handy reality nexus with which to end reality. On the minus side, super big brain becomes so clinical that he disregards Johnny Storm's plea to cure his affliction. Parentheses, yet another earlier subplot, and that's just for starters. Both the Torch and Invisible Woman pursue other avenues against Wrath, and so do independent actors like Doc Doom and the Silver Surfer. But following a foray against Wrath's henchmen, Reed does something to his old friend Ben that makes turning him into a rock monster look like small potatoes. Even Reed using a coma gun to shut down his son's mind, in parentheses here, way back in Fantastic Four, Volume 1, number 141, can't equal this act of cold-blooded intellectual hubris. Reed deceives his best friend Ben Grimm into thinking that his wife and his kids have been destroyed, just to snap the big guy out of a tendency to get freaked out in combat with Rapture. For reasons, the quote-unquote fake death sequence is not strictly necessary for the plot, so Slott may be saying that even a well-intentioned desire for boundless knowledge, in other words, endless quote-unquote hunting, holds peril for the quote-unquote nest of the family. Interesting theory there. And again, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. That goes for both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. And if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions the best of my ability. So with that being said, continuing on with the article here. In other news, the Silver Surfer brings Galactus back from the dead, in parentheses, I didn't even know he was sick, on parentheses, and the Watcher tries to persuade his fellows to go to war against the Reckoning. The other Watchers respond by putting Uatu in a chair and making him read old What If comics, okay? Not really. They're not that inhuman. Uatu is just forced to watch so many scenarios of alternate realities that they jumble his ability to know right from wrong. Fury and the Invisible Woman liberate Uatu, and for good measure, they all learn that the narrative about how the Barons were created is not accurate, and that there was a Watcher thumb on the scales. The Richards and the Grimm kids don't get a whole lot to do in most issues, but they do manage to neutralize one of the henchmen. When Reed and Sue are finally reunited, Sue rightfully busts Reed's chops for his manipulations and secret keeping, in contrast to most of the Lee Kirby Yover. The excuse, au revoir, yes. The excuse of saving the universe doesn't quite suffice. All right. I do need to go off camera here for a quick moment, so I'll be right back. But I'll put some music on for you guys while I'm gone to entertain you. All right, anyways, back to the article here. And now it's time for the big showdown. Thing versus warrior female dog Rapture. While everyone else piles on Wrath, and it's a big confession time, and it's a big confession time for Reed too. And he admits that all the knowledge he's gained from the Watcher uplift means nothing next to all the little things of their relationship. Then Reed faces off against Wrath with the ultimate nullifier, which could kill both of them. Wow, ultimate nullifier. I think I remember that. I believe that's a weapon that they would often threaten to use against Galactus at times. But after all this heavy stuff, it's time for a little eucastrophe. Reed learns one thing he didn't know using the Watcher made nullifier. Using the Watcher made nullifier kills the Watcher who uses it. And that has the effect of removing the Watcher boost from Reed's brain. The server shows up with the revived or the revivified Galactus, and they save the universe from destruction. And Uatu goes from being one of a race of godlike aliens to being the only god in town, able to repair all the problems and to change the barrens into the borderlands. Quote, a canvas of infinite possibilities, unquote, parentheses, Uatu, does miss the little detail of curing the torch's flame problems, but Slott had to leave something for number 46, the wrap-up issue, unparentheses. Hmm. The last Slott issue has nothing to do with the Reckoning War, but it does sum up the Fantastic Four's family dynamic. In this finale, Mr. Fantastic reaches out to a sister he never knew, as well as introducing her to two other half siblings, all creations of their mutual and utterly irresponsible paternal unit. um, yes, there's a minor kerfuffle with Psycho Man. But this time, the quote unquote nesting takes precedence over the quote unquote hunting. And I have to tip my hat to Dan Slott for quote unquote reckoning the best way to resolve the tensions between action adventure and family drama. Check the back issue bins on Amazon to check it out for yourself. Alrighty then, so there we go with that article. So let's see, 35 minutes. So yeah, as I said, that would be the only article for tonight. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna get right into the wrestling wrap up. We're gonna go back to last night's last night's Raw, and then we'll look ahead to tonight's NXT, and then we'll do the This Day Meets History. So with all that being said, let me go grab the stuff from. All right, so on last night's Monday Night Raw, last night's Monday Night Raw, the show opened. The show opened with the Usos defending the WWE World Tag Team titles against Alpha Academy's Otis and Akira Tozawa, in which they retained the title in that match. Also, then after that, of course, there was there were 2 Elimination Chamber qualifying matches on the night, one for the women and one for the men. In the women's qualifying match, Rhea Ripley defeated Ivy Nile and Lyra Valkyria in 9:29, in which Rhea hit the Riptide on Lyra Valkyria to get the pinfall. You also had a confrontation between AJ Lee. You had a couple of confrontations, one between AJ Lee and Becky Lynch, the other between CM Punk and Finn Balor, in confrontations that led to signings for the respective title matches coming up at Elimination Chamber, as it was announced on last night's Raw that Becky Lynch will be defending the Women's Intercontinental title against AJ Lee, while CM Punk will be defending the WWE World Heavyweight title against Finn Balor. Matches that are signed for Elimination Chamber. You also had a confrontation between Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer, as Stephanie Vaquer came out to confront both Liv Morgan and Dom Mysterio. And some build up for WrestleMania, as Liv Morgan's still trying to decide who she'll, having won the Royal Rumble, still trying to decide who she will challenge at the Rumble. Will it be the Women's World Champion Stephanie Vaquer, or will it be Jade Cargill? And we got a very interesting scene there, as well, as Liv Morgan called, I believe Liv Morgan called Stephanie Vaquer a punta, which is a very nasty word in Spanish, only for her to end up slapping Dominique Mysterio. So anyways, in other action, Maxine Dupree and Natty went to a double countout in 1:35, as Natty had put Dupree in the sharpshooter, only for AJ Lee to come out and make the save. As she was there as she had noted earlier in the night, she was there to watch her friend Maxine Dupree. And then, of course, this led to Becky attacking her as AJ Lee was trying to help Maxine Dupree to the back after having been locked in the sharpshooter. Then in a tag team match, you had Los Americanos, Bravo and Rayo Americano, with the current El Grande Americano in their corner, taking on the original El Grande Americano and Javon Evans, in which the original El Grande Americano and Javon Evans got the win against the Los Americanos, with El Grande hitting the diving headbutt on, I believe it was Bravo, to get the pinfall. And then in the main event, another triple threat qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber, this time on the men's side. LA Knight defeated Austin Theory and Penta to secure a spot in the Elimination Chamber. There were some shenanigans that happened, as the Mysterious Masked Man came out and attacked Austin Theory during the match, hitting him with the curb stomp and then putting him back in the ring, only for the rest of the bit. Now, Paul Heyman was already out in Theory's corner, but brought out Logan Paul and Bronson Reed of the of the Vision to chase off the masked man. Once Theory got back in the ring, LA Knight was able to hit him with the BFT, the blunt force trauma, in order to get the pinfall win. So in other news as well, it would seem that Ron Breakker might be out for a while, as it's been reported that he's been suffering from a hernia, and they're now now he's on the shelf. It looks like for some time. Looks like also Bianca Belair. They're not sure when she's coming back from her injury as well. So that's basically all we got. Well, let's see. So that's from last night's. That is from last night's Raw. So let's look ahead to tonight's NXT action. Tonight's NXT, which is coming from the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, and will be airing on the CW. So, so on tonight's NXT, you will have Blake Monroe taking on Jada Parker in a rivalry that's been building up for the last few weeks. Jada Parker looking to get to slap some respect out of Blake Monroe. In a tag team action, Hank and Tank of Tank Ledger and Hank Walker will be taking on the Vanity Project's duo of Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes. In a number one contender semifinal match for the Speed title to see who will advance to the finals to get a shot at Jasper Troy Speed Championship. Josh Briggs takes on Eli Knight. And in a number one contendership tag team match for the WNXT Women's title, Zaruka of Soruka and Zarya will be taking on Ren QCC of Kendall Gray and Ren Sinclair, in which whoever gets the pinfall in that tag match will earn a shot at JC Jane on the February 24th episode of NXT. So that's all we got for the wrestling wrap up. So now we're gonna go ahead and today being Tuesday, February the 10th, 2026. Let's take a look back at this date in each history. So let's see. 2021, 2001, 1951, and 2006. All right. So first off, we're going to head back 75 years ago, as on this date 75 years ago, back in 1951. The Warner Brothers cartoon Rabbit Every Monday was released in theaters on this date back in 1951. Rabbit Every Monday is a 1951 Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoon directed by Fritz Frayling. The short was released on February 10th, 1951, and stars Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam. The title is a play on Chicken Every Sunday. It is the last short to feature Sam's mouth below his mustache. His design changes midway through the film. Rabbit Every Monday has the distinction of being the first Looney Tunes cartoon to appear on the first episode of the Bugs Bunny Show on October 11th, 1960. All right, so on this date, 1951, Rabbit Every Monday was released in theaters. So now, moving ahead to the year 2001, which was 25 years ago today. on this date 25 years ago today, 2001, Eddie Colon, who y'all probably remember as one half of the Colones in the WWE, the son, of course, of Carlos Colon Sr. and the brother of Carlito, defeated Damian Steele to win the World Wrestling Council World Junior Heavyweight Championship. On this date, 25 years ago today, Eddie Colon defeated Damian Steele to become the World Wrestling Council World Junior Heavyweight Championship. All right, so now moving on to the year 2006. 20 years ago today, in the year 2006. Let's bring that up. In a project from Gravnica, Madhouse, and Satellite, Helsing Ultimate premiered on this date back in 2012. So the first four episodes of Helsing Ultimate were released on this date back in 2006, 20 years ago today. And finally, moving ahead to the year 2021, 5 years ago today, on this date, 5 years ago today. Let's bring that up. This date, 5 years ago today. The 125th issue of Back Issue from Tomorrow's went on sale on this date back in 2021. So 5 years ago today, the 125th issue of Tomorrow's Back Issue, which was $9.95 for 80 pages, went on sale on this date back in 2021. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Hey, Metal. Let me see what you have to say here. We just rewatched Hellsing Ultimate like a month ago. Well, interesting. Interesting timing. So 20 years ago today, the first 4 episodes were released. So, all right. So with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more Niche News tomorrow on Wednesday Hump Day, as it were. Following up on tonight's NXT, as well as looking ahead to tomorrow night's Collision. And don't forget, this Sunday I'll have Sabrina from Double Fly Momentum with me, and we'll be continuing our coverage of book comics that went on sale in August of 1940, focusing in on Marvel. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.